welcome to the farm. I'm Katja Williams, the rural mum, and today I'm talking with Katrina. Hi, Katrina.
Hello, Katja. So nice to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us today. And so today's series is You've Married a Farmer, Now What? You're also a farmer in this circumstance and you've gone back to your family farm. So can you talk to us a little bit about who you are, your family, and your farming operation?
Yes, absolutely. Happy to share that story with you. I guess I'm Katrina, as you know, and we are now back on my family farm. So I grew up here on the farm that we're now on. It's a little farm outside of Barham on the Murray River, and we grow avocados is the main thing that we grow here. And yeah, so I grew up here, and then after kind of heading off to boarding school, university, traveling the world for a while, and doing all sorts of other things, and then marrying my husband Tim, we decided to move back to the farm in 2011. I think we sort of had an epiphany moment after having our first baby, actually, and realised that we both wanted to be farmers, or we at least live on a farm and be farmers, really. And so we kind of went, well, we're both from farms. Let's have a look at those first, because we'll never be able to afford to buy one, is what we sort of realised, especially because we were living in Young at the time, and the land prices around there, even that long ago, were still far too expensive for us. So we thought, well, righto, we've got these two farms, let's look at our options there. So we ended up moving back to my family farm because we really were very attracted to the idea of the avocados, just something different. And we love the Barham community here because Tim had lived here previously as well, and that's where we met. So he knew the community as well, and we both loved it here. So we thought, right, let's get back to Barham. And so we will talk about the trials and tribulations and the challenges of all of that, I'm sure. But now we're both here. We've got 4 kids, and we have, I guess I've got all sorts of other little projects going on as well. We've now set up an Airbnb on the farm. I have my own business, and I teach meditation, coaching, and I've got a podcast. And we're really involved in the local community, lots of, not-for-profit boards and all that kind of thing, lots of volunteering. And yeah, the avocado business, I think we've quadrupled the size of it since we moved back. So got a lot more trees, and we now run a packing shed and pack other people's fruit. And it's good. Mostly it's good.
Sounds very busy.
Yeah, as I'll probably share with you, it does sound busy, but I guess I have a really big focus on my mental health and well-being, and so I've learnt to be able to manage that and to know when it does tip into too busy, and to be able to maintain balance is a funny word, but I would say I guess I can manage it, and we both have found a way to manage that so we don't tip into like burnout, basically. So it's okay.
That's really good. Before we continue with today's episode, I'd like to give a shout out to Thermomix. Thermomix is one of those investments that are timeless and really help produce a happy, healthy family here on farm.
What is thermomixing? It's cooking whatever you want to cook. It's cooking without being able to cook. It's cooking something you've never been able to cook. It's having thousands of recipes at your fingertips. It's whipping up espresso martinis for a hot date, making seafood chowder for the boys, or healthy meals from whatever's in the fridge.
Even that.
It's being part of a community. It's being connected to experts.
It's saving time.
It's stepping up. It's creating meal from scratch.
It's having your family look at you and say,
Wow.
by letting you be the cook you've always wanted to be, at the flick of a smart switch.
We don't cook. We Thermomix.
So let's start from the beginning. So you grew up on the family farm where you are now. So tell me a little bit about your childhood on the farm and then the journey to get back to it.
Yes. Okay. So I had just a lovely childhood, really. Like rode horses growing up. And that was like a very big part of our life. I was very, I guess, committed to that. We would ride every day. Mum was right into it, and we would, pony club and lots of competitions, and sort of, I guess, riding at an elite level at that age, really. Like I did the national competitions and state competitions, and right into it. And that was great. We were really lucky to have that opportunity. Actually, it was really a great thing to do growing up, and I got I think there's a lot of skills that I learnt from that. So I loved that. Just, growing up, we had cattle, lucerne. It was a mixed enterprise, just a few avocado trees, but they weren't the main enterprise on the farm back then. And I had one younger sister. So, you know, we had lots of good times and just all very, you know, involved in the community and all that kind of thing. Then I went off to boarding school in year 10. And actually, while I was away at boarding school, in that very first year that I was away, Dad actually took his life. And it was a huge, as you can imagine, it's that like life moment where it just changed everything completely for me in so many ways. And also in so many ways, my life stayed the same. It's very bizarre. I often describe it as like a sliding doors moment, because I just went back to boarding school and kind of carried on like almost like nothing had happened. I'm now realizing 25 years later that the trauma of that is still within me, and I've had to do a lot of work to manage and deal with that trauma, and I'm still unpacking it, to be honest. So I think that's definitely, now I know that is not the best way to cope with things, just to carry on like nothing happened. But anyway, that was the way that I managed it at the time. So, you know, and it was survival, and it served me and it served its purpose. So then I went back to boarding school and then went off to uni, and then had one kind of a boyfriend there who was not much chop, actually, looking back. Could have really done without him. But anyway, then I met Tim, and I pretty much knew immediately that he was the one for me and that he would be my life partner, or I certainly hoped that he would. And he was wonderful. And we went off traveling together, traveled the world, lived in the UK for a couple of years, and then came back to Australia. And he was a vet. So Tim worked as a vet the whole time we were traveling and all that sort of thing. And then we moved back to Australia, and we kind of thought, where are we going to live? And we lived in Barham for a little bit. Then we got married, and then to go and live in Bangkok, because we sort of wanted a different experience again. Like, we lived in the UK, but it was sort of like living there is really not much different culturally from living in Australia. So we thought, we really want to go and experience a completely different culture and do something really different. And Tim got a job working for the World Society for Protection of Animals in Bangkok. We're like, let's do it. So our honeymoon was basically a year-long trip to Bangkok. So we left the week after we got married. And then, then I got pregnant while we were over there. And so we decided to move back home. And we were going to buy into a vet practice in Young when we moved back, because Tim had worked there before, and we lived there for a couple of years, and we were going to buy into it. And then, as I said earlier, that's when we had like our epiphany moment of like, hang on a minute, we want to be on the farm. And so in 2011, we made the move back to Barham, and that's how we ended up back on the farm. That's the sort of, I don't know, kind of a medium version of the story of how we got back here. And then we've been here ever since. We've been on the farm. We lived in town for the first kind of 4 or 5 years that we were back, while Mum was still living in the main house. And then after that, we moved out to the original house, and now we live in the original house on the farm. And it's really special, actually.
That's really amazing. So can you tell me a little bit more in depth about the transition from making the decision, moving back to town, and then the transition to town? Because when you come back to a family business, it's kind of like you're starting back on the farm again from scratch. And it sounds like the main enterprise of the farm had also changed while you're away.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking back, we were very naive, I would say, as many people, I think, who moved back to a family farm are. And it was a huge transition. It was a huge decision as well. It was, you know, we thought about it for so, like, from making the decision, I think it was 6 months until, from thinking about moving back, I think it was 6 months at least until we actually decided to do it. And, you know, Tim's mum and dad didn't love it that much. They thought he was giving up this wonderful vet career, and, you know, that was pretty hard for them. And then Mum had sort of said, because Mum had actually, she was going to be leaving the farm. She'd been looking to other places, and she was thinking about selling and going and setting up a horse place anyway. And then she was like, oh, don't be ridiculous. She was like, why would you go farming? You're mad to go farming, pretty much. But also it was sort of like, oh, well, it kind of makes sense. So she was sort of really teetering on that. But it was a huge, huge decision. And I guess the safe decision would have been to stay and buy into the vet practice. And looking back financially, we'd probably be way better off doing that where we're at now. But we both knew that we wanted that lifestyle and everything. And so we did do it after much deliberation. But I would say we went into it, as I said, very naively. Like, we didn't really make very good plans. Like, we had a very loose, we did have discussions with Mum and my sister about how it was going to work and stuff, but We didn't talk about the financial side of things at all. And I would say the biggest kind of challenge for us was that Mum was very reluctant to borrow money. She had a real thing about borrowing money, and we really needed to borrow money to expand the farm. Like, we could see that there was a lot that needed to be done when we moved back. And so because Mum still owned the farm, the equity was still in her name. So that was really challenging because we needed to get her to agree to let us borrow money. And so we found that really, really hard at the start. And that was something that we didn't anticipate. We hadn't really thought about, and we didn't really realise how much money we would have to spend. So that was really challenging at the beginning. And I would say for the first couple of years, created a lot of stress, and was really quite difficult for us. And the other thing that was really hard was Mum had this, like, she had a brain tumour, not a cancerous one, but this tumour. So we moved back in the February, and then November she went in to have this major operation that knocked her out for she was a good 12 months recovering, really. And so the handover was our first harvest, and it was like we basically had to just do it on the fly. Thank goodness Tim is a very clever man and figured it all out. And we had like one of my best mates. That was the other thing. One of my best mates from uni had become like an avocado guru. So we leaned on her a lot in that first 12 months. We got her on board, and she became a consultant to us and like just helped us so much to learn everything, because we were really thrown in the deep end because Mum was out of action. And so we really had to learn everything on the fly. And yeah, she was out of action for a good 12 months, really. So it was that first couple of years was so hard looking back. I think I've almost forgotten, like thinking about it now, I forget how hard it was, but it was really tough.
Yeah. So what were you and Tim doing? You know, you're big on mental health. So what were you and Tim doing during those years to make sure you were keeping communication open, that you weren't falling apart, that you were still committed to this dream of being on the farm and being there, even though it was tough and even though you were coming up alongside challenges?
Okay, so back then I would say we were doing very little, to be honest. Apart from the fact that we had excellent communication, and we've always had really good communication, we are really on the same page. And I think luckily, we're always on the same page about everything. We have most things, really, like our big life goals and our values and where we want to be and the things we want to do. Like, we're always really aligned, thank goodness. And so I think that's been really, really important. But when we moved back here, I had no skill, like no tools, nothing. I was flying by the seat of my pants, and the wheels were coming off because we'd had one baby, and we moved back to the farm, and we had another one like the month we moved back, because I was like, I think I was 8 months pregnant or something when we moved home. And it was just like, it was chaos. It was absolute chaos, and it was busy and it was hectic, and I didn't have any tools. And yeah, it was like I wasn't meditating. I was living, like I would say I was living with the lights off. I sort of describe it now as living with the lights off, and very unconsciously. And I barely remember poor old Chester, the number 2, as a child. Like, I have pretty much no memory of him because we were just so busy. And I threw myself into everything in the community. So not only were we trying to run a new business, I was volunteering on about, 6 committees. I thought, I've got to be involved with everything. And we started a farmers market and a food group. And I was like, it was a lot. And honestly, it wasn't until we had our third baby, sort of 2 years later, that the wheels completely came off, and I had a big breakdown, and it was like, okay, something had to give, and something did give, and it was me. And that then started the whole journey to really going, well, I can't keep going like this. And that was the beginning of the whole learning and understanding that, I've got to look after my well-being. And now it's a very different story. It's a very different story. And I would say outwardly, I mean, apart from the fact, of course, that we've now been running the farm for so long, but it's a heaps bigger enterprise. So, and every year gets easier. I would say, like, outwardly life is not that much different. And now we've got 4 kids, so double the amount of kids. But the way that I manage everything internally is completely different. And that's what's made all the difference.
Yeah. So what would you say would be the main tools that you have learnt to help with that? You mentioned meditating and a few other bits and pieces, but can you really jump deep into, some of those tools that helped?
Yeah, okay, so there's lots of things. So basically for me, it was kind of, I guess it was just developing this more of awareness and becoming more aware of my thoughts and the way that I was showing up in the world. Meditation is the most powerful thing that I've done, and it's still to this day. So I meditate twice a day, 20 minutes morning, 20 minutes afternoon. And it's just my absolute would not do without practice. And then also just looking after, so it's sort of this evolving thing, learning to look after yourself and take care of your mental health and your well-being. It starts with creating more awareness, which meditation is a great tool for that. And then you start to notice, okay, well, actually I need to take care of my my body. So you're exercising more. And then you need to, we were always ate quite well, so nutrition was fine, like the eating side of it. But getting that battery really charged, sleeping better, and then having more awareness of how you're showing up, and then learning to say no to things was a massive thing. Because once you realize, oh, hang on, I've got to prioritize myself, then it becomes, okay, well, I've got to stop doing everything. I have to cut back on things so I've got more time for downtime and to stop my mind being so busy and to stop actually doing so much and what's important to me and what are my priorities. So there's tools and practices like, so meditation, exercise, get enough sleep, eat well, have downtime. And then it's really that next layer of like, learning to say no to things so that you can prioritize yourself and taking more time with the kids and making better choices. And then it's the deeper work around understanding that, okay, my circumstances, that like I can't control things outside of me. All I can control is how I'm showing up in the world. And it's that layer then. So it's sort of all these, like the layers peel back as you get into the well-being, basically into the well-being space. So not into the well-being space, but into the well-being work. It becomes the layers that peel back. So, and it's still evolving. Like, I am still, like, every new layer, there's a new layer of growth and discomfort and learning about yourself that you've got to keep doing. But the basics are those charging the battery and getting those basics right, really.
If someone was moving to the farm for the first time and they were needing to learn those tools and were starting to chip away at it, what would your suggestions be on how to start implementing that into your life? And what benefits did you start to feel from each of those tools, like such as the meditation?
So the first thing I'd say is get support, and because you can't do this stuff alone, and also know that you're not alone. Like if you're struggling with things, well, you're human. We all struggle with the same things. And I think there can be this tendency to think, oh gosh, it's just me. I'm a failure. I'm the only one that can't cope with life. So the big message is you are not the only one. Every single human being has the same struggles and the same challenges, and we all just have different levels of coping and managing it and dealing with it, and we're all at different levels of that. So I'd say absolutely support to start with, because it depends where you're at too. Like if you've got absolutely no practices and you feel out of control and you're at burnout and you don't know how to even get started, and you like know in your mind that I should be doing all this stuff, but there's this huge gap between actually doing it and the knowing that you should, then you need help. Like you need support. You need to go and see a coach or a therapist or find a mentor. You just can't do it by yourself. Like it's well, you can, but it's a lot harder, like you'll jump ahead in leaps and bounds if you get support to do it. It's just that simple, But then I would say learn how to make change, because so often we think, like say you just want to get fit or you want to start meditating or you want to implement a new tool that will be good for your well-being. Well, the hardest part is implementing and making the new change. So let's use exercise as the example. Well, I feel like I need to start moving my body every day, or I want to start exercising so I can feel better, because like physical exercise is huge, right? So and it's not I'm out working all day, so I'm being physical. No, it doesn't count as far as I'm concerned. It's okay, but it doesn't count in terms of your mental health and well-being, because the benefit of exercising is really that you moving your body and you're moving the energy through your body, so your mind is able to basically switch off or go into that state of flow. But if you're physically working, it's not the same because your mind's still busy. Right. So say you want to get fit and you want to exercise and you want to feel healthy, just move your body, like, because it's good for you. You'll go, all right, well, I'm going to start and you'll just use willpower, and tomorrow I'm going to get up and half an hour earlier, or I'm going to fit in that exercise. And maybe you'll be able to do it for the first sort of 3 days. And then everything will get really hard again. You're like, oh, that's too hard. Getting up early is awful. I just want to sleep in. It's too hard. Nah, I'm going to stop. So you need to learn how to actually implement habit change and make change for the long term. And there's actually quite a bit in that. It's quite hard to make change. Well, it's really hard to make change. It's the hardest thing. So we all think, oh, well, I'm a failure. I can't make change. I can't stick to an exercise routine, so I'm hopeless. And then we kind of internalize that as if there's something wrong with us again. Well, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just operating as a normal human being, and we all find that hard. So then you need to learn and understand how to actually make long-lasting habit change. And there's a bit to that, probably can't go into it all today, but it's basically like just learn, go and do the research. How do I change habits? How do I change at the subconscious level? How do I reprogram my stories and my thoughts and my beliefs so that I can actually make long-term change, and know that it's willpower alone is not enough. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, is get support and help, and then understand how to actually make change. Because if you want to start implementing all these well-being things, it's not going to be as easy as you think. It's going to be hard, and even learning to meditate. Like most people think, well, I can't meditate because I can't clear my thoughts, which is the biggest myth about meditation that there is. And I'm very happy to debunk that one, because no one can clear their thoughts. So you'll go to start meditating and you'll think, oh, I'll just use this little app. And, again, you'll do it for a few days and then you'll fall off. So you need to learn how to actually implement meditation for the long term. So with everything, I would say is, get support and then learn how to do it and actually implement those new habits and those new changes, from the actual, I guess, the scientific way of doing it, not just I can make change, and then when you don't, you're a failure, because you're not. It's just really hard.
Yeah, support's definitely a big one as well, because nobody knows everything, and chatting to, a handful of people, everyone has different perspectives, different life experience, and that all helps. So whether it's the help and the support you're getting is from friends, families, neighbors, or whether it's formal help, if you do need further, business savvy and you need a business coach, or you need someone further to check in with your well-being, like a counselor or something like that. There's different layers and levels that are different to everyone, as you touched on earlier. And then again, with implementing change is massive, particularly when you are moving to a family farm, because the tools that you use to be able to change your habits and your well-being, once they are set in motion and once you are able to make those changes for yourself, then you can start using the same set of tools to change something on farm. So say there's a machinery shed and you've just been wanting to get in there and clean it out, or just change the flow of one section at a time. Those skills and tools that you've developed for yourself first, laying the foundations, you can then use to address other areas on the farm that you see. Earlier in the interview, you mentioned when you first moved to the farm, like you could see how much work needed to be done and what needed to be done. And I think sometimes the longer we're on farm, if we haven't touched some of those jobs, or we haven't started progressing down the path where we thought the farm might go, or where we might like to go with it, sometimes we find those jobs even harder just to get started or finish that visualization of, yep, this is the task that needs to be done, let's do it. So those tools are a necessity, not only for ourselves and our family, but we can apply those to our farm business once we have the foundations down right.
So true. Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. And the other thing I would say is that it's also very individual to each person. I mean, like there's a range of kind of things that you can look to use, but you've got to figure out what's going to work for you and how you function best and all that kind of thing. And the same would apply to how you're going to approach jobs and tasks on the farm. Like maybe you're better if you just in the mornings, or maybe you're better in the afternoon, or maybe you're better off just having a list of jobs. Or so you've got to, and it's not a one size fits all, I think, is the thing. But I love the idea of, once you get it right for you, you can then externalize that to jobs on the farm and to the way you approach the farm. And absolutely, because it all comes from you first.
Yeah, absolutely. So with, creating, your habits and your tools for well-being for yourself, such as the meditation, tell me a little bit about how the benefits that you see from that in yourself, in your family, and then also in your farm.
Well, it's just sort of, I can't even explain how much benefit there has been, to be honest. And I guess, again, as the foundation for everything, and I would say well-being is the foundation for everything. And I think what a lot of people do is say, oh, I'll exercise when I've got more time. I'll meditate when I've got more time. I'll do that when I've got more time. And I've got it back to front, because you'll never get more time. You have to prioritize yourself as number one first. That's the key thing. And so I can't remember what you asked me now about meditation.
The benefits.
The benefits. That's right. Yeah. I was like, oh, I've got this important point to say. No, the benefits really. So basically, what meditation allows you to do is, yes, have more awareness of your thoughts, and then choose your thoughts and notice what's happening in your mind, and create more space in your mind and have more clarity of thought. So I always like to say, like, I think it was Deepak Chopra says, my body is busy, but my mind is not. And I think that's the key thing. I often think about that. So like I said to you, I'm not doing anything. So externally, life is the same as what it was 10 years ago. In fact, it's externally busier as such, but I don't feel anywhere near as busy internally as what I did back then. And that's purely because I've learned to manage my thoughts and my mind and how things are in here, so that I can manage and cope with what's going on outside. Because I cannot control the external. All I control is how I show up and how I respond and not react to whatever happens. And that's a key thing that meditation does for you. It allows you to respond rather than react to everything that's happening. And so I'm way calmer overall. I don't really get stressed very often. I still get shitty at the kids. And that is one area that I'm still like work in progress, because I do still snap at them way more than I'd like to. It's not, it's just that I think I have an ideal about being the perfect mum, and I don't want to yell at them ever, but it's like, that's unrealistic too. But that's certainly, I mean, with 4 kids, that is still my probably Achilles heel. But overall, like, I don't get stressed, and I feel mostly calm, and I'm able to think clearly about what I can manage. I can plan my days really well. And I don't have 10-mile-long to-do lists anymore. Like, it used to be on this to-do list, and I've got to get everything ticked off, and it was so hectic. But now just, I don't know, it just kind of, it's like it flows out in my mind without having to like overthink it. And it's because I'm not having, I guess it's like my thoughts are clean, instead of having this washing machine of wishy-washy crazy thoughts, or getting stuck in a rabbit hole of like, oh, I can't believe I said that thing, and then stressing about that for a week, or that person's annoying me and I hate that person. And you get stuck on these like negative kind of thought spirals for days, weeks, months. Whereas now it's like, oh, you might think about it for a half an hour and then you let it go, because you realize you can notice the thought and shift it. And I cannot, like, it's so hard to express the power of being able to notice and have an awareness of your thoughts and then choose those thoughts again. And that is everything. And it's so hard to explain that if you're sort of living unconsciously still, but that's the power of it. And it just, the benefits have just changed my life completely, really.
I think one of the key words that you used in that is you choose the thoughts that you want to focus on, and you choose, the tasks that need to be done and that you will be done, because that is where that clarity comes from, and then that's where progression comes from as well. So when you choose something that you want to focus on and prioritize, and you start to see results in that area, you get that feedback loop of positivity, because you can see things going forward, and you can see things lining back up to your values and back up to your morals, and you can see real production within that space. So I absolutely love the wording of you choose to do that. And I think when we do become more aware of what we're thinking and how we're thinking it, instead of spending, lots of times just, mindlessly searching, either whether it's social media or our minds, or focusing on something that, was said, as you said, like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, then, those clarity, we can change our mind and choose to change our mind to focus on tasks. And one of the reasons I find that, my mind isn't so wishy-washy is because I've done the pre-work of visualizing and thinking before I actually do the task. I can focus on that task. So instead of doing 1,001 things, half doing 1,001 things, then you've got that clarity of, yep, I'm going to do this. And that really, really helps as well. Thank you for joining us for part 1 of part 2 with our chat with Katrina Myers. It has been a wonderful journey here in part 1, so please make sure that you catch up with us again next week as we explore part 2 of our deep dive conversation to do with wellbeing, health, and moving to the farm.